Areni. I'm super happy to meet you today.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you too.
This is a traditional first question. Could you introduce yourself in a few words?
In a few words.
Or more than a few words if you feel like.
Okay, well, I'm ARENI. I'm born in Los Angeles to immigrant parents from Syria, Armenians from Syria. And I'm a singer, a pianist, a songwriter, and an improviser. I guess that's a few words.
Yeah.
There's a lot more. I mean, it's like there's so many experiences, but
I'm
that
sure we'll have time to talk about it, except if you want to say a bit more now.
No, I'll let you ask me.
Okay, that's good. How would you describe your musical style or musical work?
Okay. Yeah, so it has to do with the influences that I grew up around in my family. So I come from a pretty creative family. My mother is a storyteller, folklorist, and a musician at heart, really. She never got the chance to take lessons growing up, but she's very talented musically. And my father studied choral conducting and also architecture as his main profession, but he was a choral conductor for many years. So I had that experience growing up. And then also my father's sister was a classical singer, and she raised me in the Kodai and Orff methodologies. So I learned a lot of folk music growing up from all different cultures, but then also she incorporated Armenian folk music and sacred music. So I was exposed to that from a really young age. And she also researched Armenian music to a pretty extensive extent. So I had access to interesting archival recordings of folk music, and so I had that in my ears as well. And then alongside all that, I grew up playing the piano. I studied classical piano until my master's degree, studied, also some 20th century chamber music, and started improvising pretty early, actually, when I was like 15, 16, but in a very non-traditional way, I guess, not like a jazz improvisation, but just my body, like my hands just hitting the piano and trying to figure out what was going on. And then I continued doing that sort of improvisation of just gestural, more contemporary improvisation through grad school. And then eventually went to New York, and it all sort of came together. I learned a lot from New York jazz musicians. So I mean, and now it's become like I'm a songwriter pretty much. I still do think of my songs as pieces though, not just, concise songs. But there are also just traditional songs as well that I write. Yeah, so I mean, I think all of those different influences. I don't know how I would what I would call it though.
Okay.
What, what, like when people say, what style do you play? I'm like, I don't know. I feel like I have to explain my life story to to tell them what style I play.
Well, honestly, I think it's a super difficult question.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm sure all musicians feel that way. They don't know how to categorize their music. I've heard musicians say that all the time, like, I don't want to put a label on it, or I don't know what to call it. So yeah.
So maybe even a more difficult question. What does music mean to you?
Oh, actually, that one's not that hard for me. I
Okay.
mean, music growing up was just a part of my life. It was like something that was just there. I never even thought of my life without music
Mm,
growing up. And now too. I don't think I could live without it. Um, but it then also when I was getting my education, higher education, I remember distinctly having a thought that I'm going to study music for the purpose of healing, myself and helping others. So
mm,
that's been pretty much my vision for music since, probably my, mid 20s, I would say. Yeah.
mhm. And so you studied in New York?
No, I studied in Los Angeles at UCLA and then at California Institute of the Arts,
Okay.
which is a really progressive school, very experimental. That was
Okay.
really a fun
And
time
that was
musically.
for the piano or also for the singing?
Mainly for piano, but Cal Arts was they really allowed you to explore. So I did
Mm,
take voice lessons, but like I grew up singing also. So I never studied voice extensively in college or anything, just took some lessons here and there. I studied with my aunt growing up as a teenager. But then when I went on tour, that's when I really started studying more because the demand of tour, like singing on tour, is different than just singing one concert here and one concert there, when you're younger. So then when I moved to New York and when I was touring a lot, I studied voice for a few years with a really great teacher in New York. So
yeah. Can you name some of them?
oh, I mean, I studied with Kate Baker was the main teacher. She taught I think she still teaches, I don't know, at the new school, but she was really, really good for technique and any vocal problems. She was really helpful. And then I would take lessons, from different singers. Like I took one from Gretchen Parlato. I took one lesson from Jen Shu. I took one or two lessons from Theo Bleckman, like all the, New York singers who would also be touring in Europe.
Mm.
So I was learning from many, many different people and even jazz instrumentalists, like someone who I really adored. Tony Malaby was
Mm.
a great influence on me. Um, and William Parker, the bassist. So I didn't study with him, but just listening to him was incredible. So
It's also a kind of teaching
yeah,
and
absolutely.
learning. Yeah,
Yeah.
learning process.
Mhm.
What are you looking to transmit with your music?
Um, well, I think it's a little bit related to the previous question of healing, but
Hmm.
it's not just directly healing. Like I'm not saying like I'm a healer and I'm going to heal you with my music. That's not what I mean. I mean like people I would like people to have an experience where they can relate. And I think a lot of times that experience is healing indirectly. Um, so yeah, just telling my story or stories that I have read and I relate to, and then creating music around that and to offer that to people so they could have an experience of, oh, okay, like I'm not alone,
It's
you know?
beautiful. It's beautiful. Hmm. And could you tell me what represents the tradition for you?
Well, I mean, it's something that you do that connects you to the experience of having done it before or someone else having shown you something similar. It might transport you to that person or group of people.
Hmm.
I mean, that's just tradition in general, I think. And traditions, they can also change and they change shape and morph and um, they're alive, hopefully, because if it's a dead tradition, then it's no longer there, obviously. But and that means that they wouldn't be always the same because each moment you live is new. So
Yeah.
they're allowed to change. But I think there is something beautiful in also honoring the what came before. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of a combination of allowing it to flow through you, but then also honoring what was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Well, is modernity something that speak to you?
Yes, I think it used to a lot more, and now I feel like it's another thing that I can access, but I also feel that I want to just express whatever comes out more
Mm-hmm.
naturally for me. If it is that, then fine, but yeah.
And how would you create the link between tradition and present day artistic expression?
I think that's personal to each individual.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you, how would you do it?
I just do it. I don't know. I mean, yeah, because I haven't really analyzed my own process in that way. I think that I sit at the piano and I allow myself to hear things and play them and write them down,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know that that's any different than what anyone else does. Then it's a question of who the person is, what's your filter that you're filtering through.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I mean, I guess it depends on your influences then, what you've heard your whole life, what sounds natural to you, what sounds appealing to you. I don't know if
Yeah.
that answers your question.
Yes, absolutely. And do you think it can be modern to be traditional nowadays?
Sure. Why not? Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Because it's still going to have a different sound. There's no way you can duplicate it exactly like how it was during an era of music.
Mm-hmm.
And if obviously if you're like a theorist and a composer and you've studied that era for your entire academic career, then yeah, you'll know how to write like a fugue in perfection. But it's still going to be written in 2022. you
Yeah.
know
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so the melody might have a different shape, you know
It's quite obvious you have several musical influences. Could you explain them?
well, classical in quotes, I mean art music, of Europe, Armenian music, folk, and liturgical, so modal music, which is a different system entirely than European music. Um, and then I would say like 20th century improvisation and jazz is an influence. I wouldn't consider myself an expert in that field, but I have always enjoyed listening to it.
Mm. And talking about influences, could you name a few of the singers and instrumentalists who had an impact on you, except from the teachers you were already talking about, but just more in general?
Well, those were the people that were influencing me at the time. That's why I sought them out
Mm-hmm.
to have some study with them. So that definitely those same people. Um, so do you mean like living or anyone?
Anyone?
Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, I like all sorts of music, from early pre-Baroque to you know, Chopin to Debussy and Prokofiev and I don't know, all sorts of like I love Berg,
Yeah.
I love Messiaen, I love um, who else? A lot of people. Um, Miles Davis. I mean, who
Yeah.
Billie Holiday, taught me a lot about phrasing. Oh, speaking of it, another teacher actually was Connie Crothers in New York. She was an incredible teacher. She passed away several years ago, but she taught me a lot through listening to Billie Holiday with phrasing and gestures. Um, I'm sure there's more. I just can't, they
Okay.
don't come up at once.
That's okay. Maybe could you talk about your Armenian roots and if it has an impact on your music and how?
Sure. Um, like directly on the sound of the music, you mean?
Or in the compositions or in the sound or in general? I mean, how would you describe your Armenian roots in your music or
Yeah. I mean, there's different ways of approaching it, I feel. There were times where I wanted to set Armenian traditional songs to the piano, let's say. And then later on, it kind of became more of the essence and feeling that I got when I sang that music. And that just kind of came into my own compositions. So it's not just like using the devices of the music necessarily, but also just the overall experience and sense of it.
Mm.
Uh, and and especially when the Armenian music is tuned in a different tuning. I mean, if you sing it in untempered, tuning, then it's not really going to match with European instruments anyway. So there was once I started learning that, there was that issue of, I'm a pianist, how is this going to work out? So I did try to stretch the piano as far as I could with like preparations and making it into a completely percussive sound object as opposed to a melodic um, instrument, which it can be, obviously. Um, I did that with one of my pieces in Bloom, where there
Yeah.
was that story that I told, the Water Bride, and I made the piano into like a gongs and bells, with preparations basically. And then my partner, Nicola Stocker, he also had great bells, and I gave him some Tibetan singing bowls and things like that. So we created this kind of sonic world with percussion basically. Um,
And it's beautiful.
Thank you. My mother transmitted that story that
Mm.
led to me. Yeah.
Okay.
So it can happen in so many different ways. And I guess that sort of answers your question about modernity and
Hmm.
tradition,
Yeah.
because it's really whatever you feel in a way that you feel still honors it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because I'm not gonna, disrespect the tradition, but I also I didn't grow up there. I grew up here, so I have all these different things that I bring to it.
So you live in LA.
Yeah.
Okay. And even if you're Armenian and even if you live and were born in the US, do you consider yourself as being part of the European jazz scene or not at all?
Well, yes. I mean, I think I was more so like in the early 2000s because I was there all the time.
Okay.
And, you know,
You were in Paris, I think.
Paris, Germany, Switzerland,
Hmm.
all over. And I definitely can relate to European culture. I mean, obviously, it's closer to my roots than I am now. Now I'm in some faraway oasis. So, um, yeah, and I have family there too. I
Hmm.
can, I could, you know, I could definitely see myself living in Europe, but life just led me back to my home of my birthplace. I wouldn't necessarily call this home in like the deepest sense, but it is where I'm from,
Hmm.
in terms of my birth. So yeah, and then I record with the European label, so I have that also. Yeah, sure. Okay, I think my career started there, so I can definitely relate to that. I love the way Europeans play jazz.
Hmm. How would you describe it? The way European plays jazz, they play jazz.
There's something like pure about it and clean. That's
Clean.
all I can say.
I don't know if
There's
it,
like
I
a
don't know if.
pureness in the sound that
Okay.
I don't hear
Mm.
in American jazz as much. It's like, I wouldn't say it's more organized, although I think it is a little bit more organized.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, there's a basis of a little. I feel that they listen in a different way.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Which one of your different projects in your career is the most relevant to you?
I don't think I've done it yet. I mean, they're
Okay.
all very important so far to me because they're all a different point in my development. So, I mean, I would say the last album so far, but I feel like there is still something more.
Hmm. Are you busy writing a new one, maybe?
Hmm.
So maybe it's going to be for the next one.
We'll see. I hope. I mean, I have a good feeling. So,
Great. And how much do other artistic disciplines influence your art?
mhm. um, yeah, they do. I've always wanted to dance more than I do.
Mm.
Um, I've taken some classes here and there. I feel like when I teach, especially, I talk a lot about movement and breath and dancing to my students. Because a lot of people don't seem to realize that when you're playing an instrument, you're basically dancing with
Mm.
I mean, mostly your hands, but you have to have that full body connection, even if you're not a singer.
Mm.
Um, so I think it's related in that way. I believe that also as a singer, knowing some acting and being in theater is important, and to have a more thorough understanding of it actually, because it's all storytelling.
Hmm.
So songs are stories, so studying acting is good. I enjoy doing that. I'm doing that more now.
And do you teach a lot?
I do teach quite a bit. I'm not too much now. I taught a lot when we were all in the pandemic and, on Zoom, which was difficult, but I was very grateful for it. um, yeah, I've had a full studio at certain times, but now I'm cutting back a bit so I can write more. But yeah, I do enjoy teaching. That's for
So it's
sure.
not in a school. It's private lessons.
Private lessons, yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about the melody. What is the role of the melody for you, and which place does the melodic part have in your singing or playing when you play the piano?
Melody is everything.
Mm.
Melody is where, I mean, I used to start fully with melody for every song, words and melody.
Okay.
And just it's speech, the
Mm.
intonation of speech. You can find melody everywhere. So yeah, it's really the beginning of a song for me. Lately, I've had experience where I've written chords and then composed a melody, but I feel majority of the time I've written words and then the words become melody based off the sound of the words.
Mm. And do you prefer to stay close to what's written, or is interpretation what matters more to you?
Oh, you mean if it's not my music or even my music?
Even if it's your music?
Do I prefer it? I mean, that's interesting because then there's a question of what's your training? Like, have you been trained? I think I've been trained to read, 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 you know.
Uh-huh.
But I've worked very hard on liberating myself from the page. Yeah. And the page is still really important. I mean, I need the page sometimes, if I'm not memorized, obviously. Um, but there, you know, there's that space where you're playing live and the music tells you where to go. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's okay. That's beautiful.
So you feel free to go deeper in the interpretation.
Absolutely, especially if it's my own song. I mean, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I believe people should be able to do it with old written music as well. A lot of the great composers were improvisers anyway. So, but obviously they had sections of improvisation, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and cadenzas and such.
Yeah.
Um, so it was more formal.
Yeah.
But when it's your own song, yeah. But even then, I decide. Sometimes I decide, okay, this section is going to be open, and this section is this written
Mm-hmm.
part.
Mm-hmm.
But then you never know what happens.
Never.
I never know what happens. You have to follow the wave, you know.
And how important is the language used when you sing?
Mhm. Yeah, it's something I've thought about definitely more lately because I'm writing new songs and I'm wondering, do I really feel it in this language or do I just want to know language or a different language? Yeah, that language definitely carries a vibration, so it does make a difference. Sometimes I like it when the language is hidden.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so obvious.
And do you prefer to transmit a message with the lyrics, or do you rather use your voice as an instrument to convey emotions without words?
Yeah, there's both, you know, there's both. Each one is a different feeling. The without words is obviously more of a state of being or state of mind, I guess. With words is also very powerful. You know, words are very powerful. People think words aren't important. They're really important. How you speak and what you deliver, you know, just in life. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah.
Okay, interesting. And let's talk about improvisation because I know you improvise also. What is the role of improvisation in your music?
Hmm. Well, I think I spoke about it a little bit with the idea of being off or on the page. Improvisation, I mean, that was one aspect of it. But of course, earlier in my development, improvisation was really important for me to be able to um, expand out of my classical training as a pianist because I was learning, you know, Beethoven, Bach, and all the written music of that time. So I didn't understand really how to play without someone else's notes in front of me.
Mm.
So that's why I started just gestural improvisation and just understanding how my body connected to the instrument through my ear. I had to train myself to do that. Nobody really taught me how to do that. It was like years and years and years of me trying to figure out
Mm.
the sounds and how to connect that to my body, my ear. Yeah, so it was really, really important for me. Free improvisation then became, it's almost like it was, you know, like a sculpture. A sculptor starts with a big block of stone and you're chiseling away. So it was like this big stone was this free improvisation sound, and I was chiseling away for
Mm-hmm.
years to try to understand what I was hearing
Mm-hmm.
and training myself to play what I was hearing.
And do you also improvise with your voice?
Oh yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I did more so for many years in like downtown Manhattan and, you know, free jazz and a lot of extended technique things. And yeah, now I improvise more just to my songs, but
Hmm.
I do feel called back to that a little bit lately, especially.
And
It's
you,
very liberating.
sorry.
It's very liberating. That's all I
Yeah.
said.
And do you sometimes really work on improvisation, or do you improvise only instinctively?
I do mostly instinctively. And I think just the years in which I chiseled away at my ear and, you know, my own trained myself, I was working, you know, more specifically during those years. But now I hear it and I just sing it, whatever I'm writing in the context of what I'm writing. So,
Hmm. And you were also talking about the sound. So, do you sometimes really focus on which sound you do when you sing, or is it just
yeah,
coming?
no, definitely. Yeah, it just comes, but also I don't want to get into like always one pattern, although of course everybody has their own style. You can do whatever you want. If you want to sing one way your whole life, that's great. But I lately also again because you know you go through different phases. So I feel that I kind of completed one phase and now I'm starting another and I want to sort of kind of dig a little bit more. So yeah, I have been thinking of how can I sound, you know, find access different sounds again.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
And do you spend a lot of time composing?
Yeah, not as much as I would like yet, but I'm working on it.
And do you have a process when you compose? Well, you were talking about first the melody, um, but I mean, yeah.
now it's now it's different. Now I am sitting at the keyboard and, you know, writing down what I hear.
Mm-hmm.
Before it was saying words and recording them, and I still record as well. I record improvisations and then I, you know, what do you call it? Write it down. Write down what I recorded. That's part of the process too.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Because that's, you know, that's where, like I said, improvisation was a big part of
Yeah.
my development. So I allow that to happen. And why not use a part of your own improvisation and make it a composition? Because that's all it is. It's composition in the real time.
Mm.
So
Yeah. And what encounters had an maybe an impact on the composition of your music?
um all of them. I can't, you know, all of them. From my teacher in grad school, Vicky Ray, to some of the jazz teachers at that same school, Paul Novros and David Roitstein. And then, you know, just listening to all these incredible musicians that were around me when I was touring, especially with Tigran Hamasyan. I was, you know, surrounded by him and then Sam Minai, who's a great bass player, and the two band members were from the band Knee Body. Do you know that band?
No.
Knee Body, Ben Wendell and Nate Wood. And you know, I
Yeah.
was I was
I know the guys, but no, not
yeah. Okay, so
the
their, you know,
yeah.
main band is called Knee Body. So, you know, just listening to them, it was like trial by fire in terms of being on stage. And but your question was more about my compositions.
No, it can be also on your music in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really think just having those experiences and listening to
Yeah.
people improvising literally 3 feet away from you is a really powerful thing, very humbling. So yeah, and I asked them a lot of questions too, you know.
Okay. And I also heard you on the album Infinity by Amir Sabert.
Oh yeah, that was a while, like I don't know how many years ago. Yeah.
It's brilliant. I love it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a good
And
musician.
yeah, very
I
good.
never met him. I did that recording remotely.
Really? Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Okay. But your album Bloom is marvelous.
Thank
Really.
you.
I'm listening to it very, very often
Thank you
when
so
I
much.
need some calm and introspection.
Yeah, it's really nocturnal music.
It's true.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really grateful for that album, that experience.
And I mean, do you feel that your voice is changing with the time or with the years? I don't know.
Like my instrument, you mean?
Instrument, yeah, voice,
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, I
vocal
think that's
instrument.
natural for it to change a little bit. It feels just deeper
Mm.
how um the way it vibrates a little deeper. Um yeah, I mean, that's all I can really say. I started studying a little more opera actually.
Oh,
Yeah, so that's been a really great experience of just expanding the vibrational capacity of your voice, you know. Yeah, I would never perform it publicly, but I enjoy singing some things in the privacy of my own home.
it's good, it's good. And do you have a vocal hygiene, maybe? Or not at all?
Yes, I do. Yeah. Yeah. I also have like tricks and tips when your voice isn't feeling so great.
Yeah. Tell us, give it to us.
Steam,
Yeah.
neti pot, you know, warm tea with lemon and honey.
Mm.
Um, I don't know,
Okay, all.
gargling, like lots of things. I mean, you'd have to come and take a lesson.
I know most of them, I think.
Yeah, I think you do. A lot of singers do.
And do you feel musically close to other jazz singers in Europe?
I haven't been there in so long. I feel really separated now.
Just in the music. I'm not talking about close
Yeah, but I mean,
relationship, but just
I haven't been experiencing the music, you know, too much. I'm not, to be completely honest, I'm not like an avid music listener unless it's live.
okay.
Because I feel like my mind is already, excuse me, my mind is already overloaded with like music and the work of it that sometimes I don't want to listen to anything.
Okay.
I prefer quiet. I'm being honest. Some people are shocked, and it's interesting because I find that there's a big difference, you know, between music fans, like people who are maybe artists in another way, but they're really avid music listeners, and then musicians themselves, it's like a completely different experience of how much you can take in.
Yeah.
So
Cool. So that was it. Thanks a lot, ARENI. It was a beautiful moment together.
oh, thank you.